You are listening to the Mountainside Podcast, and joining us back in studio once again is my good friend Dan Gates. He's a board member for Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management. He's the host of the new podcast, Through the Gates. Dan has played such an integral part in defending the North American model of wildlife management. I'm honored and privileged to call him a friend, and I always enjoy any time I get to spend with him. This was a great conversation. It was nice to have Dan in here. Enjoy the episode, and thanks for listening. Well, I know a guy that can help me out with that.
There's a guy that runs this business. He runs all over the state, and according to the antis, he kills everything that comes in his path.
Right. It's not true. You haven't killed me yet. It's awesome to have you in here. You've been gone. We've seen a lot of each other lately, which is super awesome. I always enjoy hanging out with you, and I'm excited to have you back in here. I think we had you back in November, right after.
Yeah, it was like the week.
It was either November or December.
It was right after the election, and it was before. I think it was before the commission meeting.
Yeah, it was.
So the commission meeting where they voted on the East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan. So I think it was right in that transition time.
It was right before that.
Yeah.
Congratulations on the win, man.
Thanks.
I'm so happy for you. I'm happy for the community.
The entire community did a great job, pretty much nationwide.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we might be getting a bit complacent, though.
Yeah, I just found out today we got some other stuff coming, and we've been fighting stuff all session, all legislative session, and it comes on the coattails of that. And we've been telling everybody, don't put your guard down, don't put your checkbook up, and don't be complacent with mediocrity, because we won, but the old adage is, it's not what you've done, it's what you've done lately. Well, evidently 4 months ago isn't lately enough.
Right.
And so, we got a bunch of irons in the fire we'll end up discussing today, and kind of bringing some light to some of the conversations about a variety of different issues.
It's almost like they're coming back with a vengeance, right? It's like, it's retaliation.
It's retaliation, and they know that they have, not just here.
Mm-hmm.
This is in, we had on the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus call that we did today, we have 80, 85, 90 people that attend once a month. That's a boring setting for most people, but it's an hour. And we had Ellery Tucker Williams, formerly of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, but she was with the Idaho Fish and Game Department now. Great friend of mine, a fabulous lady. And she came on to talk about wolves and lions and beavers up there. And it's the same thing, same roadmap, same playbook, same narrative, same people, same strategy at every single level. And they're doing it in Idaho, they're doing it in Washington, they're doing it in Oregon, they're trying to redo stuff in California, they're back in New Mexico, and they're not just in ballot initiative sides, they're at the legislative side of things, the commission side of things, the public opinion side of things. When you win like we did on Proposition 127, it reinvigorates the losers and their funders, to the point to where they're like, okay, well, we didn't do it right last time. We need twice as much money, and we need to change our strategy.
Well, it also gives them an opportunity to ask for more money, right?
Yeah, because
that's kind of what
look at the ASPCA, look at the World Wildlife Fund, all the stuff that comes out during the holiday season when everybody's in the gift giving mode, and they're all on there. You're sitting there eating a turkey sandwich from leftover Thanksgiving, getting ready to watch the football game, and a bunch of sorry looking dogs that have been dead for 14 years are on the commercial. From 14 years ago, it's the same dogs, same people, but they take advantage of people's emotions. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that there's not a place for any of that stuff when it comes to the message. But, the Humane Society of the United States on Valentine's Day of this year changed their name. They changed it because it wasn't resonating with the general public, and they were getting confused, or the animal shelters, the humane societies in most communities around the country were getting confused about the connectivity. There's not a dollar that's ever been generated from the Humane Society of the United States to any animal shelter in North America. But when you say Humane Society and people go down to find their dog or get a shot or get a neuter or whatever, they think that there's a connectivity to the Humane Society of the United States, and nothing could be further from the truth. That's one of the reasons why they changed their name.
It's so crazy, man. Like, I've learned, this podcast has taught me just about nonprofits in general. Like, you really have to vet them. You should publicly go look at their books, which should be available if they're doing it the right way.
Yep.
And you better find out where the money's going before you just start shelling out money to people because
Well, and it's interesting you mentioned that because I want to bring it up because after the campaign now, we've started to get a few inquiries about before I donate to the Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, I want to know where my money is going to go. I'm on a fixed income, and I don't just kick it out to anybody. I want to know where it's going to go. What are you doing with the money? How are you getting it? Where are you spending it? And I just tell people that you can go to the internet and look up anybody's 990 if they're a 501c3 or a 501c4. You can look up their 990. You can find out how much money they brought in, how much money they spend, what they spend on salaries, what they spend on grants, what they spend on investments, what they spend on advertising. And I had one gentleman that says, well, I looked up your 990, and I see that you're getting paid. I said, yes, sir. He goes, well, why should I pay you? I said, because you're not doing it. Somebody has to do this. We are fighting an army of animal extremism that if you look at their dollar values of what they do for paychecks, or in the tens of millions of dollars fighting volunteer people. And you know why you lose? Because volunteers typically don't do very good unless you're in the United States military.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's not only that, man. Like I know you personally. Those are the nonprofits that I get involved with is when I know somebody personally, typically. And I know how hard you work. I know that you and I have talked at midnight before. You've called me back like at midnight. I'll shoot you a text. I'm like, he's probably sleeping, but if I don't send him this,
or I text you at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're like, do you ever sleep?
Yeah. And then, just the miles that you put on.
Oh God.
And like you were in here all day yesterday with me.
Yep.
Doing your own thing, which is awesome. And then, this morning you're down at...
Had meetings last night. I was at the Parks and Wildlife office for a Wildlife Council meeting this morning. Ran the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus meeting. Come here, do this. Then I've got a wolf meeting tonight at 7 o'clock for an hour and a half. Tomorrow I've got 2 days of continuing education credit training in Denver, Thursday and Friday. And then Friday night I drive to Grand Junction, spend the night, have a dinner meeting over there. And the next morning I drive to Richfield, Utah for the Utah Houndsmen Association for their banquet to present. My kid just had surgery yesterday.
Oh, really?
My wife's been ill. It's not an excuse. It's just that you have to sacrifice and put things on the table and the plate if you're going to fight like the antis do.
Yeah.
You have to.
I mean, nobody's kicking down doors more than Dan Gates, and that's why I'm 100% behind you because there's other organizations out there, and it's not that they're not doing good or anything like that. I think it was for 127, it was a culmination of everybody working together. Mm-hmm. But you did more podcasts last year than the Mountainside did.
Yeah, I did 86
You know what I mean?
podcasts.
So
I traveled to 9 states, and then I can't tell you how many things I did on Riverside or Zoom or Google Meets or Team or whatever. But by some of the biggest names in the industry.
I know. So yeah, man, I am blown away at how hard you actually work and how. I mean, you're always in some sort of spotlight. That's not easy either.
No, and when you
to keep your cool, I guess. Right?
When you have iron-on patches and shirts and bobbleheads,
right.
and when you're going through an airport, and I say this tongue in cheek because it's so foreign. It's not uncomfortable. It's humbling. You're going through an airport and people say, "Hey, are you Dan Gates? Can I get a picture with you? Would you mind taking a picture with my wife? Would you mind signing this? Can we get a selfie?" And you're doing it at a sports show, or you're doing it at a convention, or you're doing it at a restaurant in some other town that you're there for an event for. That's not what I expected out of any of this because it's political. It's politically driven and motivated, and the people that we touched, not just me, but the cause, but I was the tip of the spear. The people that we touched and the thoughtful-minded individuals that came out literally sometimes with a check in hand during the campaign or post-campaign with tears in their eyes because somebody spoke on their behalf to step up and prop up what they didn't know how to do, didn't have the money to do, weren't prepared to do it, didn't have the voice to be able to do it, but they knew that something had to be done. It's just they didn't know how to do it. We've sat around with complacency and mediocrity from the sportsman side for far too long. And we've acted like, well, somebody else needs to do that. They have to do this. They're going to take care of this. RMEF is doing this. RMBS is doing this. Wild sheep is doing that. Mule deer is doing this. Well, there's some truth to that. But they can't do it all. The states and the individuals in those states have to pick themselves up by their bootstraps. And it sounds like that old cliche. Mm-hmm. But they have to be able to do it and support the organizations because, as I said through the entire campaign, C3 organizations are limited on their capabilities for political advocacy and ballot initiatives.
100%.
That's mandated under the IRS laws and rules and regulations of a C3. We were a C4.
Yep.
Now, we've created a C3 for a fundraising component post-campaign, post-election. But it's not that any of those organizations don't do anything, but they couldn't do what they needed to do because of the tax status.
And they couldn't move as fast either. A lot of these organizations have boards that have to vote on what needs to be done. And, I think you being a one-man operation is the way to go.
Well, we got a good board behind us. And
I'm not saying that you're solely alone, but your team, right?
Yeah.
You all are like-minded. You understand how to move and shake.
Today, on the way up here, during one of the meetings, I got the notice of another ballot initiative coming up for 2026.
Crazy.
This was supposed to be it.
Coloradans are going to get to play wildlife expert on the ballot again this November.
The devil at the door.
We're poised to pass it in November. All of the prior ballot measures on lion hunting have won.
The way to end hunting.
What they're doing to these lions is demonstrably inhumane.
But you said no. This is my moment.
Colorado sportsmen are under attack. Defend the North American model.
We have to go vote.
They want to take us out. They want to say that hunting isn't really necessary anymore. Well, it is. Man has always hunted.
You came out and said, this is my fight. This is my way of life. No longer will I stand idle because I am a sportsman.
I love that we were all coming together finally for a common goal.
We have a story that's worth telling. 125 years of science and success that says conservation works, and you aren't going to take it from me.
You can trust CPW to do the right thing by lions and bobcats because they're already doing that.
Wildlife is about the most precious thing we have. It does not come by accident.
I think we should be leaving wildlife management to the experts.
And the people listened. We defeated Prop 127 by a landslide. The voters said it loud and clear. I don't want extremists managing my wildlife. I want experts. The fight is far from over. The force that seeks to take away your way of life, your passion, and your wildlife continues their assault on the North American model. They continue to lie, to deceive, and they will continue undermining the experts until hunters are off of the landscape. That's their goal. Support the fight. Continue to speak. Tell the story, and true conservation will continue to prevail. Keep casting, keep tracking, keep pursuing, and together we can save the hunt. I'm delivering that to all these other organizations. They didn't know it. Doesn't make us any smarter. It just makes us, we're nimble enough and we're covert enough to be in those capacities in a timely manner. Now, the difference between now and what happened in 2023 on Initiative 91, which became Prop 127, is that was, you had 6 days to enact. You had 6 days to formulate a plan of action and write a check to be through that initial stage. CRWM was the only organization on the planet was capable of doing that because we had money. We were already in the working process. We already had the strategy team in the rears that we were talking about. We already had who we were going to deal with for attorneys. Major organizations could not have acted upon what CRWM, they couldn't have done it in 30 days, let alone 6. And 6 was the deadline. That was the timeline. This is when it's happening. You show up. Here's the money. How are you going to be represented? Nobody else had the capability of doing that.
Well, and it was very cool that I was able to be a little bit behind the scenes, getting to know you and you being in Colorado and how much we did together leading up to that. I mean, I think I did like 4 podcasts with you before the election.
Close to it, yeah.
And then afterwards, we've done a few. And then I apologize to you for putting the idea of a podcast in your head. And I don't think it was just me, but I had envisioned, there's this guy, Mike Baker. Are you familiar with him?
I've heard of him, yeah.
He's like former CIA. He started this podcast. It's called the Presidential Daily Brief. And he just does these little news blips that are like 15 minutes long. It's kind of what's going on in the world of war, whether it's in Iraq, whether it's in Israel, with Hamas, Ukraine, whatever, and it's a quick little brief, and he'll crack a few jokes in there, and that's really all it is. But you're just kind of getting the facts of what's going on from boots on the ground guys that are reporting back to him.
Like a morning brief.
Yeah, it's just a presidential daily brief, right? Yeah. So I was like, God, it would be awesome to have that in the wildlife space, because literally since you and I talked last night, you left here at 7 p.m. probably?
Yeah, 7, yeah.
When you came back up today at 3,
yeah.
Look at how much has changed.
Yeah, look
you
at
know
how much
has
changed on the legislative side, the commission side, the ballot initiative side in 24 hours, or 22 hours, or 21 hours, or whatever. It's the problem with doing, and there's a time and place for what you got, and we started doing some briefs ourselves. Some of those are 15 to 30 minutes. And I got to give a shout out to you and the mountainside and allowing us to be able to mooch off of you and ride your coattails, because propping an idea in a mind like mine that has a rat in a cage running around and around and around, you're trying to figure out a way to always enhance and benefit the product or the service that you're doing. I'm self-employed. I've been doing this all my life. How do you outsmart the squirrel that's eating wires in somebody's house? How do you outsmart the coyote that's killing somebody's chickens? It doesn't have to be a lethal component, but how do you outsmart them? How do you outsmart our opposition? And the only way to do that, in my mind, in today's setting, is to keep the pedal to the metal and keep, moving forward, keep the momentum going. Well, what better way to do that is invest in the material that you had me do, invest in the connectivity or the resources that are available to you, which you provide, which hopefully eventually we'll get to a point to where we can do some of our own and still feed off of you and whatever other capacity.
Listen, man, I am happy to help. I think that this is so important to me.
Well, I think it is, because it's part of, you open up a toolbox of most people, and there's a wrench, and there's a hammer, and there's a screwdriver. It might be a tape measure. There might be a broken pair of pliers. But you open up the toolbox of a mechanic, and there's tools that you and I don't know how to operate. My kid is like that. He's got like a NASCAR style garage in there, and he just it's like this addiction to him. If it's new, he's got to have it. He'll go pull something out, and he'll turn around and use that. And I'm saying, when the hell did they start making that? And he goes, I just saw it on the internet, and this is the baddest thing because it does this. I only use it about once a year, once every 2 years, but man, it makes it easy when you're going to do it. I look at a podcast that is well done and has good content and has good guests, that is consistent, like what you taught me, consistent, because we were on podcasts for the year that do once and twice a week. We were on podcasts for the year that do once a month, that have a different audience and a different following. We were on podcasts that said they did once a week, and sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. We were on podcasts that didn't hold the appointment with me because they forgot or they had other things come up. We were on live shows that maybe hadn't been live for quite some time. And I thought the only way that you're going to be able to do what you need to do is consistency through exposure and saturation. And Bobby Marshall on the Mountainside and Ranella and Meat Eater and Rogan in his show, Clay Newcomb. I mean, they guys I really respect and admire. It's consistency. You don't have to be 3 hours at a time. You don't have to be 15-minute shorts. Somewhere in between, as long as you're consistent with content, and as long as you have good content that's relevant to the audience, and it's over and over and over and over again. Because what I'm found after just 15 or 16 episodes, you don't want somebody to turn around and look for it and go, I've seen those. What's the new one?
Yeah.
What's the new one?
Well, they're just going to go to somebody else's podcast.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If it doesn't come out Friday, they're excited to listen to yours. But guess what? The moment it doesn't come out, now they're going to go fill a void, right?
Yeah. I mean, did you see that? Did you see the teaser today for Christine when she was in here?
Man, what a badass chick!
Isn't she?
Listen, I gotta say too, when I gave you this idea, I was giving you like the Mike Baker version because I was like, I know how much work goes into doing long form podcasts, how much time I invest. I mean, this is a full-time job for me. And I have a team behind me too. It's not just me, right? Like it's a very small team and I like to keep it that way. And we all work hard. But I know how much time goes into just scheduling, and then you have sponsorship reads, and then you have guests that might lose their voice the day of the podcast, right? Like shit happens, right?
Which we'll get her back on.
Yeah.
But we found a substitute. It wasn't a replacement, it was a substitute. But
you're lucky because you're Dan Gates, so when you call somebody, they're normally just a yes, you know. How many no's have you heard?
I haven't heard any no's yet.
Yeah.
Which now we've actually got a pretty good list of. There's a list of people I want to get, but I got to figure out how to timely, invest that. There's a list of people that want to get on.
I got a list of people for you that I want you to have on.
Because you see the value of the content, and look, this. You and I talked about this. It's infotainment.
Mm-hmm.
Who'd have thought 15 years ago that anybody wanted to drive around or go to work or walk the dog or work out or whatever and listen to 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people sit around and pass the bullshit? Who'd have thought that? Most people don't have the time. But these are topics and discussions and guests that people find interesting that maybe they'll never get a chance to talk to themselves. Maybe they find value in the subject. They never get to turn around and breach that subject, or you can find subject matter experts. Or if you've created something like what we did with CRWM, Save the Hunt, and the campaign of 127, we got handed a gift of followers to the tune of, 21,000 followers between 2 social media platforms. That's not giant. But there was times before the campaign that we were getting 2.5 million views a week.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to know what was going on. Now, maybe some of those were the antis, but didn't matter because we were getting our message out to them too. So they gave us a gift. What are we going to do? Just turn around and shelve it? Put it in the mothballs and say, oh, well, next time we need it.
No.
Look, I just showed you today. We're going to need it. We're going to need it again. It's here. And it didn't last but about 90 or 120 days.
Yeah. And man, did you hit the ground running? I think it was December when we were kind of spitballing what you could do with the podcast and what equipment to buy and, different ways that you could go about doing it and getting it out there on different platforms. But I had no idea you were going to go the route that you went with it, man. Like, it is so fucking cool.
Thanks.
I'm just shocked and blown away, and I am a major fan of it, man. Like, I think you have something bigger than CRWM or just wildlife conservation right now, the North American model of wildlife conservation.
Yep.
I think that was kind of ingrained in CRWM and the Instagram page, and everybody was used to hearing that. But man, the people, your guests that you've had on already,
pretty badass, aren't they?
Are fucking incredible. And then last night, I was so busy with traveling and stuff that I kind of got behind on them. Normally, I listen to them right away when they come out, and I watched the one last night where you went to the Yukon, and I want to hear more about this. This is where I want to go today, right? Because we beat the shit out of wildlife policy.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to tell you right now, stop listening to the mountainside for wildlife policy stuff. Go listen to Through the Gates because you're doing live updates there with different stuff. Follow CRWM if you're not already on Instagram. That's a must. Go to the website, donate at Save the Hunt Colorado. Is it .com?
Yep,
okay.
.com.
.com. Yep. Those are 3 staples that if you care about wildlife, North American heritage that runs in families, if your dad, brother hunts, even if you're not a hunter and you care about wildlife and you're a rock climber, whatever, right? Like,
if you care about
preserve
solid science-based wildlife management and sustainable management and perpetuity, we're not the only gig in town, but right now we become the tip of the spear. We become the target of the enemy in the state of Colorado, which the enemy in the state of Colorado is connected in all these other states as well. When my name comes up in webinars that the antis deal with, and it's a 2-hour webinar, invite only, but you've got people in there that that actually, have a way to get in. Spies, assassins, whatever you want to call them. and for the first 21 minutes of a 2-hour webinar, the subject matter is Dan Gates.
Yeah.
Subject matter is not about what we're going to do for wildlife, what we're going to do for fundraising. No, the subject matter is Dan Gates. Then they get into all the components of how they need to deal with Dan Gates. But for the first 21 minutes of 120 minutes, I'm the subject. I mean, you would think that they would be on my side if they're talking about that. I'm in their head rent-free, and they think that they have an upper hand on us, but they don't realize that I got a great big giant freaking chip on my shoulder. I was here before them. I'm here during them. I will be here after them. I have beat them on every single level, and I encourage every one of those sons of bitches to turn around and step up and belly up to the bar, because this ain't over.
Right. No, they're pouring it on more now than they were a year ago.
It is. It is more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is why I encourage you. I think that's so cool, because every episode something comes out, because you're not a guy to shelter information. And you're very well spoken. So you have an elegant way of addressing these issues and explaining it to dumb guys like me. So I've really ridden your coattails. When I have somebody in here that's sitting across from me and they start talking about wolves, I can educatedly speak to them because of what I've heard from you.
Educatedly? Is that a word?
No, it's not.
Oh,
See what I'm talking about?
It's an Evergreen High School word.
Yeah. So, point proven. But really, I mean, I think it's amazing what you're doing, because it's much more than just what I envisioned was that Mike Baker 15 minutes, because I thought that was something that you could kind of manage. And next thing I know, I got a falcon in here that's shitting on the walls and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that was fucking cool.
That's the only one you've ever had here.
Yeah.
We talked about, I'm trying to bring a donkey in for the feral wild donky program. And I don't know if we can get him up the steps or not.
I'll take a hole in the wall, dude, as long as you come with it. If it was anybody else, I'd tell him to fuck off. But yeah, man, it's really cool. And I want to hear about this Yukon trip. This is what I want to dive into, because you did an hour podcast in the Yukon on the Canadian side, right?
Yep.
I don't think people realize how vast and how big and how desolate the Yukon is unless they've studied it in some form or fashion.
You don't realize the remoteness of that.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, it's on the Instagram page. There's a couple clips on there that you could show
Tyler.
And just go on the Instagram page. It's not too far in, just because it was the most recent. So hit a couple of those on the grid.
Under the
there. Oh. So there's some of that, and then there's some other pictures in there that you can check. I mean, the Yukon territories has gotten like something like 50,000 people in the entire province, and about 35,000 of those live in the capital city of Whitehorse. The province is, I think, about 5 or 6 times bigger than the state of Colorado, with 50,000 people.
Wow.
There's 30, somewhere around, I think James, the outfitter, James O'Farrell, the gentleman I'm sitting there with around the stove.
Shout out to him, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't want to
badass.
interrupt you, but he did such a fucking good job for not having many people. I mean, how many people does he converse with on a regular basis?
Well, they do fishing trips in the summer, and they do guided hunts and stuff. But, I mean, he takes about 3 trappers a year on these excursions, and then has to put up with our dumbasses for 10 days.
Yeah.
Babysitting you. And, picks you up at the hotel in Whitehorse, turns around and drives you 7.5, 8 hours away, puts your ass on a snowmobile, drives you in, on the frozen tundra, across frozen lakes and frozen rivers, and puts you in the little cabins like that one. That one there was mine. And we were attempting to trap wolves, wolverine, lynx, marten, mink, beaver, and otter. But there was a warming spell when we were there. And, I had prepared for this. I wanted to go, I don't know if I wanted to go freeze my ass off, but I prepared to freeze my ass off. And I bought some 100 below Banff Canadian, like dog sledding boots. And the week before, look at those pictures. I mean, the week before we were going, it warmed up into the teens and 20s as opposed to, Fahrenheit.
Wow.
And I didn't need those boots. I took other boots. It's a good thing I didn't have to take some of the other clothes. But this place here was cool. That's the Signpost Forest in Watson Lake. And it's about 10 acres of signs from around the world that are illegally confiscated and then taken there to hang up. I mean,
you should have hung a CRWM.
Next time I'm going, I'll take something.
Definitely take one of those stickers you gave me yesterday.
I'll do that. That'll be good. I'll put it on one of the Colorado places there. But James O'Farrell with Grizzly Creek Lodge, him and his dad.
Is that a lynx?
Yep, that's a lynx.
Wow.
Yep, we caught a couple lynx, caught a bunch of pine marten. He had caught a few mink. That's a pine marten there. That's us skinning pine marten in his little skinning shed. And but we covered over 500 miles in 10 days on snowmobile.
Who else is doing this on a podcast? Let's fucking go, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, it's
awesome.
It's like badass.
Yeah.
And I learned so much because I've ridden a snowmobile, but not for 20 some odd years. But to ride a snowmobile with him, they do two-person snowmobiles, and the reason being is, and I could send you the clip, but I saw on Instagram where his dad just sunk a machine through the ice here just like since I've been back, and so because of the warming and cooling, look at those mountain views on some of that stuff where we're in the plane. I mean, that's
incredible, man.
Isn't that badass?
So cool.
I mean, that's part of why we do what we do individually and collectively, like for CRWM or the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation or any one of these other organizations. What I was going to say is it's of interest is, Colorado has hundreds, if not thousands, of outfitters in the state of Colorado. The Yukon has 30 or less.
Wow.
They all have concessions. Each one of those trappers has a concession, and they actually get that concession through the province. And then that concession essentially becomes theirs unless they don't use it. But they can sell it. They can put housing on it. Then the houses become theirs. So there's a money value to it. But the reason they do the concessions.
So is it their property, like a homestead type situation?
It's their stuff,
okay.
But they get the permit or the concession to go along with it. And the reason they do that is for wildlife management. They don't do it just so the trapper can have a concession and say, I do this. You have to be able to turn around and utilize that property for the trapping side. They can't outfit on it. They can't commercially fish on it. They can do things for themselves. But the concession itself is a fur bearer management program that's institutionally been brought into each provincial side of the Canadian wildlife management, the North American model. And to see how they've been able to do this, in my mind, the magazines, the books, the booklets, the pamphlets from the conservation department up there are so in-depth from the management and conservation side. They're not trying to put it on the back burner. They're actually put it out in front of people. This is why we do it. This is how we do it. This is how you acquire this. This is how it's managed. This is how the data is. This is what we collect. This is why you can continue to do what you do. And we do it the same but differently for indigenous peoples because they have different.
I caught some of that, man. That was so cool that you guys went through some of that on that episode.
I mean, anybody that's interested in the logistics of that, I mean, that's a great episode. I mean, it's not in a studio. It's in the cabin. It's with my cell phone. The audio's good. The video's great. Video's okay. But it's not me in a closet with a pair of pajamas writing cartoons. So if anybody's followed us, they'll understand that reference. But no, there's so much remoteness and individualism and outdoorsmanship that's incorporated.
Stewardship, really, yeah.
I mean, it's hard to explain for somebody that's never done anything like that. Now, look, I've been a trapper the better part of my life since I was 12 years old. But to be able to go on an excursion like this is something I've thought about. I've read all the old books by Robert Frost and all the old trapping books and the Klondike gold rushes and all the stuff and the dog mushing and everything. I was just enamored with that. And a matter of fact, James's dad, Dave, who runs Grizzly Creek Lodge, they came from California and moved up there in his early ages and went to work for a giant ranch and then had the opportunity to be able to acquire, I wouldn't say the property, but the concession. Mm-hmm. And when they did, they were still young and growing a family and trying to figure out how to put their foot on the landscape. But they're U.S. Canadian citizens. I mean, they U.S. and Canadian dual citizenship. Same with James. But to see what they did is what I envisioned as I was a young man. When my wife and I first got together, I was married, got divorced, and I was married for 7 months. The divorce took 9. And so it'll kind of tell you how that went. But that was in my early 20s. And
sounds like ballot box biology.
Yeah, that's pretty much. Just sign here, and you like this. And,
you like wolves.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it'd have been better off if I just which is funny. I'll tell a story, but so my ex-sister-in-law is still my current sister-in-law because my brother married her sister, and so there's this. Interconnected ancestral type of relationship in some capacity. But when my wife and I, my current wife, we've been married going on 37 years.
Wow.
I should have married her to start with. When we first got together, I wanted to pack my shit and go. I wanted to go to Alaska. And bless her heart that we didn't have to, but she was willing to go with me. And I was looking at a school district job, just looking for something, just to be able to turn around and give me a reason to go. I was looking for a school district job in a supply shop in Bristol Bay in Dillingham, Alaska. And my wife, as much as she loved me, and I think she still does, she was willing to work in a cannery at the time. And she's like, well, whatever it takes to turn around and make a living, we'll just go. Well, this was back in the
fish cannery,
like a fish cannery, like on the Deadliest Catch stuff.
That's
they just
a
bring all
shitty
the stuff.
job,
Yeah,
probably.
but she was willing to do it for me, and I'm thinking, boy, pickings must have been really bad in Colorado, or I must have been hung like a horse, one of the two. I mean, but she decided to go, and luckily for her, I think our lives would have changed dramatically. There was 2 individuals that were up for the final interview, and one was me, and one was a guy that lived in Dillingham. And so who were they going to pick? Now, we didn't do Skype interviews and internet stuff and everything. This was all on the phone. I kicked myself in the ass for not turning around and trying to continue to pursue something up there. But I'm glad that we stayed where we're at, except for the last 8 or 9 or 10 years because of the ballot box biology, the fights that we have to deal with.
I'm fucking glad you're here because this isn't, not to sidetrack us because I want to hear the rest of the story, but I am so sick and tired of hearing hunters and people that aren't even from the state complain about this and then turn around and say, and this is even at the highest level of guys that are in hunting as a business, right? Whether it's the social media presence or they're moving their companies, they're just leaving Colorado. And I can understand why, but I'm tired of hearing about it. Like if we don't stand up and fight here, it's just going to follow you to another state.
It will, and the hardest thing, Bobby, that I know of is, this is one thing that I think the antis are really trying to capitalize on, is shut it down. Look at the firearm industry, what they're doing. I know better than a dozen stores, mom and pop stores, open 5-6 days a week, been there 35 years, been there 20 years, been there 10 years, said screw it. They're closing their doors. They're moving out of state. It's time to retire. We'll sell the property. We'll turn around and live off of that. We'll move to Arizona in the wintertime and turn around and go to Montana in the summertime. We're not doing this shit anymore.
Yeah.
But if a bunch of these other laws, rules, and regulations, this legislation passes, these ballot initiatives continually just undermine the Second Amendment and the ability to own and legally possess firearms, you'll see more and more businesses go out and it's like,
especially the gun shops and stuff, right? Like,
we had Adam Nelson with Slide a Gun Shop.
Shout out, what an awesome guy!
Isn't he badass?
Yeah.
They're sponsors of CRWM and Through the Gates. It's a fabulous gun store. I mean, it's almost in the center of the state in Salida. It's worth visiting if you're anywhere in the state of Colorado or if you're just driving through from another state. But they're under the gun to the point where they could potentially lose 20 to 40% of their entire business because of the senseless laws, rules, and regulations. Now, the difference being is that they run a very formidably even-flowing business. But think of the mom-and-pop deal that we're talking, that I'm not saying they're broke, but they're not going through the product, and they don't have the staff, and they don't have the resources, and they don't have the classes, and they don't have all the accoutrements and accessories and stuff. Adam at the Slide a Gun Shop, him and Josiah, have something to fill the gap or the niche on some way, shape, or form. But it ain't cheap.
Right.
The mom and pop stores that they're trying to run out of business is part of their entire model. And I think that if these type of things continue, you're going to see 3,000 FFLs, federal firearms license holders in the state of Colorado, in a matter of time being dwindled down to 1,500 or 2,000, and they'll keep turning around and chipping away, and it'll be 700 or 1,500, and then they'll keep chipping away, and pretty soon it'll be Bass Pro and Cabela's and Murdoch's and Big R, because the big motherships have the resources to be able to do it, and everybody else will be out. That's their goal. They want to stop firearm sales just like they want to stop hunting. It's not about mountain lions and bobcats. It's not about deer and elk. It's not about ducks. It's about the fact that somebody wants to buy a license and go out and pursue it. And how do you do that? You either do it with a bow or you do it with a gun. And I guarantee they're going to try to restrict archery hunting in some capacity. The easiest way to do the hunting as a whole is do the gun side of it and restrict the living crap out of it to the point where there's nothing left.
Well, and I think that that's one thing that you really brought to light and really made me understand. Like, even though I'm not a mountain lion hunter or a houndsman, neither of those, I stood behind what was going on because I saw the bigger picture.
Yep. Well, look at that podcast I did with James.
Yeah.
Asked him about the Canadian gun laws. Asked him about, so you can't even defend yourself.
I know.
And he goes, no, we can't defend ourselves. We can't carry a knife or bear spray or a pitchfork with the intent to defend ourselves. Now, if we get attacked or something happens and it happens to be sitting there, that's not with intent. But we cannot intend to defend ourselves. What freaking damn...
That's crazy, man.
I mean, look what they're doing in Colorado as far as the concealed carry, the acquisition, the distribution, the dispersal of firearms, the requirements that you have to do, age restrictions on 18 to 20 years old to be able to buy ammunition because they've already restricted the firearm side of it. That's getting to a point, not to the level it is in Canada. But if you talk to some of these, what I would consider whack job legislators, first of all, they don't understand the process. Second of all, I think they're agenda-driven to the point to where they've had issues in their family or their life or their livelihood that they think that everybody is part of the bad problem. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. And I think that we should be considerate of the people that are law-abiding citizens on everything, not just firearms. And we should up the penalty and prosecute to the fullest extent of the law with no exceptions. I don't care what somebody says. Sure. If you do this, I don't care what reason you did it, you should pay for it. In Canada, it would be against the law for them to turn around and prevent somebody from doing something on that if they prepare with the intent. You carry a knife and you end up stabbing somebody with that knife, you have to prove that you didn't carry that knife for self-defense.
That's crazy.
I think that that's what part of the world is becoming.
Where does it fall in line with wildlife protection then? Because, I mean, you're dealing with brown bears at certain types of the season, or
that's part of the deal.
Where you're at, or polar bears.
And depending on where you're at and what they do, they have a prohibition right now on the purchasing of handguns. And like he said, like James said in the podcast, it's hard to carry a bunch of beaver traps or maybe a moose carcass on your back when you're turning around packing something out, and now you got to carry a rifle because you can't have a handgun.
Wow.
You're in the bush. You flew in on a float plane. You've been riding a horseback for 12 days.
I think we take a lot of what we have here for granted.
Well, that's what James said.
Yeah.
He said, do not let your Second Amendment rights disappear.
100%.
This kid's 34 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, he's my son's age. In two completely different backgrounds and lifestyles from a governmental perspective. My kid has a concealed carry, and he can open carry. He can do a lot of stuff. They can't in Canada.
Are these same operations in Alaska? Like, are the trapping concessions the same or set up differently, or how
completely set up differently?
Okay.
In Alaska, to the best of my knowledge, you can pretty much go wherever you're at, just similar to any other place that we have public lands and private lands in the lower 48. In Colorado, even though we're only able to utilize cage traps for recreational purposes, for avocational purposes, we have to use cage traps on public land or private land. On public land, essentially, you and I and 47 other guys could go trap one hillside with cages if we wanted to. The antis don't want any of us to do that. It used to be until 1996 with Amendment 14, which was a constitutional ballot initiative. They took away, by a 52 to 48% margin back in 96, they took away the ability to be able to utilize foothold traps, cable restraint devices, or snares, depending on how you want to classify it, and body gripping devices. Those would be like for beavers, and they call them conibear traps, but it's a lethal tool. They took away all that stuff unless it has to do with human health and safety, protection of private property, agriculture damage and depredation permits. Those permits are given through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and somebody has to notify the game warden we have depredation issues, and then they can issue the permit for the utilization of those tools with significant restrictions through best management practices that we worked on for multiple years to revise and update what was done in 96 because of new best management practices that happened throughout the course of time over the course of the last 25 years. In Canada, their restrictions are more severe but more lucrative, if that makes sense. You can't do this, but you can do that. You can do this, but you can't do that. In Colorado, it's just you can't do any of this, and you can only do that. And what I saw from my engagement up there is an overall attempt to try to do not only what's best and humane for the wildlife, but also considerate of the individuals that are pursuing that wildlife for a fur bearer management program that the Conservation Department of the Yukon Territories is fully supportive of. One of the coolest things that I saw, and I think there was a picture on one of those Instagram posts where I'm standing, it was one of the first pictures, I'm standing in front of the office, and I got the conservation sign behind me. And we went in there, had to get my trapping license as a tourism trapper with a registered trapper. And I think it's on one of those. No. Oh, my bad. You're going all over the place. That one. Yeah. So it's an ugly building, but that's in Watson Lake. The coolest thing, the two officers that were in there, the Canadian, not
they recognized you, didn't they?
Well, no, but
they got a bobblehead.
They got a bobblehead sitting there. They got patches in a Dan Gates t-shirt. But both of them trap.
That's awesome.
I know 2 game wardens in the state of Colorado that legitimately trap, and they participate in the avocational consumptive use of fur bearer management.
Mm-hmm.
I only met 2 up there, and both of them trap. And I start talking to James, and he's like, the overwhelming majority of these guys trap or pursue game in some capacity. We're hiring wardens in the state of Colorado, bona fide game wardens that have never bought a hunting license. They've
Seriously?
never hunted in their life. They've never fished in their life. That's the mentality we're starting to get into wildlife conservation and management in the lower 48.
They got to be in eastern Colorado, right?
No.
Really?
No.
I've never run across one that's not.
Well, you're running across more and more.
Really?
We went through the badge pinning ceremony last year and watched the new people get hired.
Uh-huh.
Very nice people. I recall talking to 2 out of 25 that have actually ever pursued wildlife with a hunting license in their life.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
This is a job. It's not a career.
Right. It's changed. That mentality's changed. Like, I've seen it personally change from being a kid and having Perry Will walk into our camp, and hang out with Perry for a few hours.
Yeah.
Shoot the shit,
And now Senator Will, former senator, former representative, now county commissioner Will, is probably one of the most old school, dyed-in-the-wool game wardens you could ever run across in your entire life.
We had him on the podcast early on.
He's badass. Isn't he?
It was so much fun, man.
I mean, if you could get through his mustache and understand what when he's talking about, and he was on the call today.
He's got that true Colorado accent. It's
yeah.
so funny, like those Western Slope guys that have. It's almost like a Texas accent, but it's not. It's Colorado.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you know what you ought to do.
Yep.
It's
the fucking best. I love it, man.
I've known Perry a long, long time.
Yeah.
He's a good friend. He's a complete asset to sportsmen and women in conservation.
You were going to say something else.
Well, he has been an ass before, but I think I've been a bigger one. So no, he's as good as you can get.
Mm-hmm.
I think he spent better than 40 some odd years with the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Division.
Perry was actually my first real interaction with a game warden.
Really?
Yeah. I think I was maybe 10 or 11 years old in the Western Slope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've got memories of guys on the
White River National Forest, man. Yeah.
Colorado Springs, there was a guy, this is funny, it tells you how long I've been doing this crap. So I worked in a taxidermy shop when I was about 12 years old in Colorado Springs. I worked there until about 20 and grew up with some of the most badass guys on the planet. I mean, I thought they were. They were always in fights every weekend at bars, so it just seemed like they were. And that's where I got all of my attitude, I think, from, because they beat the crap out of me about 3 times a week and made me suck up or buck up, one of the two. That's awesome. And but the game wardens used to come into that taxidermy shop, and there was fur buyers, and there was trappers and outfitters and Western artists and taxidermy guys, taxidermists, and coyote hunters and loggers, and I mean, just these were dyed-in-the-wool, boots on the ground guys that lived, breathed, and ate every single thing that they possibly could do. Some of the old badass ranchers you could ever get in your world. Most of those properties are all been bought up, and they're in some sort of a conservation easement, or they're in some sort of annexation or whatever. But there was an old game warden by the name of Terrell Quick, and Terrell, what I remember as a kid is when he would shake somebody's hand. He was an old guy. When he would shake somebody's hand, younger guys, guys in their 20s and 30s, I remember them turning around and always rubbing their hand on their pants afterwards. It's like, son of a bitch. It's like, my God. I just
he was letting you know his strength. Yeah.
No,
he's one of those
of course,
guys.
I didn't have to shake his hand because I was just a kid. But it was funny because seeing some of the people I've dealt with in the last 15 or 20 years with CPW and old Division of Wildlife, they would look at me and go, how long you been doing this? Because you mentioned guys like Terrell Quick and Nick Pinnell and Bob Davies, Dave Klippinger, guys that were, I mean, you stop and think, somebody's been in an agency working for 30 or 40 years and can't remember, but only had heard somebody that I'm talking about 50 or 60 years ago. It shows how long you've been playing it. I remember my son, who is now 34 years old, he'll be 34 in May. I used to tell him, when you shake somebody's hand, you look them in the eye and shake as hard as you possibly can. And so he started doing that. But now he's got mitts like Mickey Mouse on steroids. I mean, he'll shake your hand and just crush the damn thing. I mean,
it's all those unique tools he's got around. Right?
Exactly.
You got to have some hands.
I hate shaking that kid's hand because we'll shake hands and kiss each other and tell each other love her when you're going away or whatever. And I'm thinking, God, I just hope he doesn't squeeze hard. And I remember going to a trappers convention in Rochester, Minnesota, and he was just a kid, and he shook this old man's hand. And that old man looked at him and said, "My God," he says, "that's a hell of a handshake for a young man." He says,
awesome.
says, you're about getting big enough to kick your old man's ass. And Ethan says, big enough and able are two different things. And I remember that as growing up in the taxidermy shop because guys that were the badass fighters, the guys that went out bar hopping and trap shooting and chasing coyotes and all the stuff that you could do in the day that is probably not worth talking about now because it'd be illegal. But these were some bad guys, but they'd always take the new guy and say, "Hey, this is Terrell Quick," and just because they wanted Terrell to turn around and put him to their knees, and that's exactly what my son does. But that's what James O'Farrell, the trapper in the Yukon.
Okay,
I mean, he's a little smaller than I am, shorter stature. He's not near as fat, doesn't weigh as much, but he is dyed-in-the-wool outdoorsman.
That's awesome.
I mean, outdoorsman.
Didn't you guys mention in the podcast that he used to be a pro fighter or something? Or
his dad did.
Yeah,
his dad was a pro fighter. His dad did a variety
like a boxer
of things.
Or something. Or?
Yep, did boxing and ran professional competition dog mushing.
Is that how that's how they ended up?
Yeah,
in
that's
the Yukon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, it's an interesting story.
Yeah, this is so cool, man. It was awesome. It was a great watch. I encourage
one of the things
episode
that was
16, right?
Episode
Through the Gates.
I think that's 16. I think it is. Yeah, 15 or 16. Christine might be 16. I think it was 15.
Okay.
But one of the coolest things from a sportsman's perspective is when we drove 7.5 hours south, a couple hours south of Watson Lake, turned on this little logging road. And now, granted, people here talk about a logging road, but he had to have a radio in his truck for the logging trucks that were working back toward the end of the logging road.
You do not want to get run off the road by those fucking things.
No, and I mean, the snow's like 8 foot deep on each side of the road because they plow the road. And so he turns around and gives the mile marker as we're going in. And we drive in, and it's 4 kilometers and 5 kilometers and 6 kilometers and 8 kilometers and 9 kilometers and 10 kilometers, and then we get to this logging area. It's an old burned area that burned about 8 years ago, and I'm assuming, but it's hundreds of thousands of acres of burned ground. We rode through burned stuff on the snowmobile for miles. But you park at the logging area, and then you dump the snowmobile out, and then it was about a 40 or a 50-minute ride to the cabin is all. But you're going like maybe 30 minutes of that across frozen ice, and there ain't nothing. Well, in Colorado, I've never ridden across frozen ice for miles, and you'd be going across this frozen section in the middle of this. I mean, it's the middle of wintertime. There's 3 foot of snow on the ice, and all of a sudden there's water there, like open water.
Seriously?
Yeah. And he goes, well, that's overflow. He said, but because of the warming spell, and you'll start to get that. And he says, so if I say pin it, I'm going to pin it. It means hang your ass on, because he's pulling a sled behind you. You're sitting back on the back, and he doesn't want to get.
He's going to hydroplane it.
Yeah, he's going to hydroplane it because you're open water, or your water that's got ice underneath it, but you don't know how deep the ice is. And he said, well, if it's and people that snowmobile across open ice and stuff all know this, but the average person doesn't. He said, if it's dark ice, you better hang on to your ass. If it's blue ice, we're probably good, but if there's water on top of it, we just need to go fast. Well, we were doing rivers, and we were doing open lakes, and I'm talking lakes that are like 4, 5, 6, 7 miles across.
Wow.
And one of the things that on his dad's Instagram or Facebook page last week is his dad sunk a machine through the ice. Now, this is his dad that did it. He didn't do it with a dumbass trapper in tow.
Right, somebody that has 30 years experience or however long you've been up there.
Exactly.
Right?
And I'm thinking, well, no wonder they don't want idiots like me riding another snowmobile alongside of them or next to them and then turn around and hit the wrong spot.
Right.
You got a $20,000 machine. Not only does the guy not want to kill you, he didn't want you dumping this $20,000 machine in the bottom of the lake.
They're not easy to get up there. It's the last line of fucking the supply train.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
But we never crossed a fence. Never saw a fence.
That's awesome.
Never opened a gate. Never saw a footprint. Never saw another vehicle track, another snowmobile track. There was times that we were on the ice. He was chopping out stuff or digging out stuff with a chainsaw that we have some of our Instagram posts. And he's chopping out chainsaw spots for beaver traps in front of the lodges. Mm. And not until then, when he shut the chainsaw off. Now, I live in Colorado. There's very few times that it's still. There's a breeze. Where I live, it's like typhoon every single day. And there was times that I swear it was cold, but I could breathe, and the mist would stay in front of your face the whole time. Like you had to step away from it. There was no breeze. It was the most silent that I've ever heard in my entire life. There's nothing. And then when you looked up, you never saw a jet stream, ever. I guess who the hell wants to fly over the Yukon?
How much daylight do you guys have up there? Is it like...
It got light about 9:30 or 10 in the morning, and it started getting dark about 5:30, but it didn't get dark until almost 7.
Okay.
Now, in December, January, when the darkest time, I think it's maybe 6 or 7 hours of daylight total. I didn't never see the northern lights, but I saw the aftermath or the after effect of the northern lights. I had to get up and pee one night, and I stepped out on the porch of the little cabin there, and I looked up, and I'm thinking, it's clear as a bell, and it's just calm. I mean, there's no breeze.
What do the stars look like? Like, what elevation are you guys at?
It was about 2,600 feet, 23 to 2,600 feet. But I looked up, and I thought, well, that looks weird. And it was the northern lights, it was more like shaking up a snow globe, and you would start to see things coming down, and they were trickling back and forth, but no color to them, just the white haze.
Yeah.
And so I got to see something of that. Well, I jump around a lot on this story because you remember.
No, this is awesome. Points. Keep going, man.
So when I flew in from Vancouver to Whitehorse, there was a lot of young people on the plane, and there was a young
going
couple.
To Whitehorse.
Yeah, like young Japanese people and young Mexican people and young, I don't know what other type of people. And there was the whole plane was full of a bunch of young people.
Like in their 20s or?
20s, 30s.
Okay.
I was like, it's kind of weird. I mean, couples. Thinking, Whitehorse must be a booming place in the wintertime. I don't know. Maybe they're all going dog mushing or something.
Really?
Well, come to find out that because
It was Comic-Con.
Yeah, well, it's actually more comical than Comic-Con. And so James was telling me, he said there's places up there farther than Whitehorse, up toward Old Crow and up toward Fairbanks and stuff, that rent out bubble domes.
Ah, for the Northern Lights.
Yeah, but he said they'll never get in the side of it. It's if you can conceive a child under the Northern Lights, it'll turn out to be a really special child. So everybody goes up there to screw underneath the Northern Lights. And I said, well, when are you going to start that? And James says, we're not doing that. We're doing trapping excursions. We're not doing the other. And so when I flew out of Whitehorse on March 1st to go back to Vancouver, there was 2 of those couples that I had seen going up. They'd been there 10 days as well. And I don't know if they conceived anything, but they showed me video of the Northern Lights that they did see. And it was almost fake looking, because I've seen them on other people's videos and National Geographic and other History Channel stuff. But they saw the blue and the yellow and the red and the orange back to the green and stuff, and that was wow. I think that was what James was trying to allude to, that on occasion they see it down farther.
Google some images of Northern Lights in the Yukon.
Yeah, or video or whatever. Because I mean, it was funny because the Mexican couple that I talked to were out of.
So I got to go
Oaxaca?
back to this conception thing real quick before we get off.
I figured that'd get you.
What is the premise behind it? That you're going to have a smarter kid?
You're going to have a smarter kid if you conceive a child underneath the Northern Lights.
So what? They're going to get recruited to the CIA or some shit? Or
I don't know. Maybe they become president of the world or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's crazy.
Look at this purple one over there.
It sounds like somebody sold them some bullshit to get them to the Yukon to
but
rent
they got
their
bubble
cabins.
houses up there, and
they're
they're like bubble domes.
So it's all glass, so you can see it.
Yeah, so you just lay underneath the stars in this heated bubble dome with your bed and
what
your
were the
jacuzzi.
stars like up there because of the northern?
As bright as anything I've ever seen, and I've been in places before that when I was in Mongolia back in 2000.
What were you doing in Mongolia?
I was hunting. I hunted elk over in Mongolia.
Are you serious?
Yeah, in 2001.
What kind of are they, like a stag or
they're
like a North
They're
American
marl
elk?
stags. Tian Shan Wapiti is what they are.
Okay.
And so I hunted elk there in 2001. And I thought that the stars were as bright as what you could ever get. I think they were probably brighter in the Yukon territories than they were in Mongolia.
Wow.
And I mean, I remember telling this to my kid when he was little and I was traveling a little bit. See, they got teepees underneath the Northern Lights. I mean, look at that. I mean, I guess
that's a long ways to go to get it on.
And especially at a teepee when it's 42 below zero.
Oh, shit, I forgot the Viagra.
Yeah. It's like some things shrivel up when it's cold. But see, there's the little tents and stuff. I don't see any of the domes that you can conceive your kid. But when my son was little and I was traveling, I remember telling him, because he's like, how are you going to be gone? And when am I going to see you again? And how come I can't talk to you? And well, this is the late 90s and 2000s. And we didn't have cell phones you could just turn around and carry everywhere. We didn't have the internet that you could turn around and do anything with. I remember having a flip phone that had a battery pack to it that looked like a Duracell car battery.
Right.
But I remember telling him that if you looked up and you saw the Little Dipper, that no matter where we saw the Little Dipper at the same time, which is a complete and blatant lie because it's dark on one side of the planet and it's light on the other side. But you tell a little kid that, and if he looks up, and he wanted to go outside when it was dark because
that's awesome. Man. I love lying to kids.
Yeah. Well, I did it for Santa Claus for 38 years.
We all do it.
I don't know about the conception side. If that's a lie or
he's
not.
He's probably so smart he'd figure it out.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not having kids anyway.
That's where Elon Musk was born, or conceived rather.
Yeah. He went there. He had a great big bubble house. But the whole experience. Because of what I had to do the last 4 or 5 years, and specifically the last 18 months on this campaign, I'm not griping. But I didn't hunt in Colorado last year for the first time in 49 years.
I know, that blows me away.
I mean, I went to Africa last summer on a trip that I'd booked during COVID. I wasn't going to go, and the antis were getting their signatures counted through the Secretary of State, and Mark Truex, our campaign manager, with PacWest Strategies, said, there's not anything you can do here, period. There's nothing you can do. Take your trip and go. And so I did. And so I hunted over there for 7 days. It was a 10-day trip. I cut back to 7. And I hunted plains game in South Africa. And to any antis that are listening to this, yes, I killed a bunch of stuff. And I fed the villages to beyond epic proportions. And I've got proof of that. That's not me saying it. But that was what I hunted last year. I didn't hunt anything in the state of Colorado. So when people said, well, where are you going or what are you doing? And appreciate, when you get back. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. When the campaign was going, I lived it, ate it, breathed it, crapped it, slept it, screwed it, drank it. Everything was campaign.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm willing to do that again because I got that big freaking chip on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
But there's things that I can do when the campaign's not going on. Like I was fortunate enough to be able to go to the Yukon, and I went to Africa. My son and I are going back to Africa in 2026.
That's so badass.
I'm going to Saskatchewan in November this year. It'll be after the election. We can't have ballot initiatives this year because we can, but it has to be tax based. It can't be civil type stuff.
What are you doing in Saskatchewan? Saskatchewan.
What'd you drink?
Yeah, I need another one. That's the problem.
You need to be conceived under the sun of the Northern Lights.
It's the CTE.
Yeah. I'm going with a couple friends of mine that helped on the campaign in hunting whitetail deer in Saskatchewan in November.
Oh, nice. They get big up there, don't they?
Yeah. I hunted up in Alberta back in 2001 right after 9/11, and I was unsuccessful. Saw a couple deer, opted not to pull the trigger on anything, and just for the antis, we don't kill all the time. We make the decision on what we do and how we do it.
Especially if you're fucking me, man.
You just walk around and do I leave my arrows at home today or
I pay $50 to take, as you say, take my bow for a walk.
Yeah. But I'm fortunate enough to be able to do a few things. Did some early in life and then took a hiatus because the kid's getting older and you're trying to make your business work and you're trying to get things together and money didn't work as well as what you'd hoped. And then you had, I think it was 2008 and 2009 of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and the stock market crash. And then everybody's, sucking up to everything they got. And then about the time you start to get some things in line, well, then COVID hits, we still did stuff, but we didn't do the big excursions like what I had done in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah, you got to get out and do that. You got to figure out a way. If you're not checking out the Mountainside Podcast on YouTube, you absolutely should be. If you like the content that we create here and you want to help support the podcast, please take a moment, subscribe to us on YouTube, and hit that notification bell.
This was supposed to be it.
Coloradans are going to get to play wildlife expert on the ballot again this November.
The devil at the door.
We're poised to pass it in November. All of the prior ballot measures on lion hunting have won.
The way to end hunting.
What they're doing to these lions is demonstrably inhumane.
But you said no. This is my moment.
Colorado sportsmen are under attack. Defend the North American model.
We have to go vote.
They want to take us out. They want to say that hunting isn't really necessary anymore. Well, it is. Man has always hunted.
You came out and said, this is my fight. This is my way of life. No longer will I stand idle because I am a sportsman.
I love that we were all coming together finally for a common goal.
We have a story that's worth telling. 125 years of science and success that says conservation works, and you aren't going to take it from me.
You can trust CPW to do the right thing by lions and bobcats because they're already doing that.
Wildlife is about the most precious thing we have. It does not come by accident.
I think we should be leaving wildlife management to the experts.
And the people listened. We defeated Prop 127 by a landslide. The voters said it loud and clear. I don't want extremists managing my wildlife. I want experts. The fight is far from over. The force that seeks to take away your way of life, your passion, and your wildlife continues their assault on the North American model. They continue to lie, to deceive, and they will continue undermining the experts until hunters are off of the landscape. That's their goal. Support the fight. Continue to speak. Tell the story, and true conservation will continue to prevail. Keep casting, keep tracking, keep pursuing, and together we can save the hunt. I was asked today, could you use an assistant? Yeah, but no matter how much I paid anybody, I don't have the time or the intestinal fortitude or the bandwidth to turn around and try to train somebody to do any part of what I do at this point in time.
Hard.
Now, I could...
Not to mention all your experience. I think that that's one thing that, because you've popped up on so many people's radars in the last year, like people don't realize you've been doing this for a really fucking long time.
Yeah. Yeah, just like I mentioned talking about the game wardens.
Yeah.
First, I received an award at the last commission meeting for Conservationist of the Year. I've gotten a bunch of awards in the last
I know, you've
6
been
to 8
crushing.
weeks.
You deserve every bit of it, though.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, well, it's I try to be humble about it. It's cool, but I'm accepting it on behalf of the board members of CRWM and the entire sportsman community that help pull things together. A lot of them have CRWM on them. A lot of them have my name on them. But I didn't do this for recognition, and I didn't do it for support, and I didn't do it for money. I did it for the cause. And these organizations, which we still keep getting them in. Matter of fact, tomorrow night I'm going to the Denver Business Journal, and we're being acknowledged as a recipient.
Crazy, man.
It's,
that's really cool. Actually, it gives me like a little bit of hope that it's not just old school anglers and upland bird hunters and your typical guys that are behind everything, kind of funding everything, that there's other people paying attention to wildlife policy.
Yeah, they were appreciative of what we did, but to be acknowledged over and over and over by such a diversified group of individuals and organizations, as I said, one of the most humbling ones was being acknowledged and nominated and selected as the Conservationist of the Year that was given to me by the Colorado Wildlife Council. But I want to emphasize, people say, well, there's hanky-panky. I want to emphasize 26 different organizations nominated me to give the nomination to the council. 26 different statewide, regional, and national organizations nominated me.
Well, who's saying that? Is it the hunting community that's...
No, mostly the antis.
Okay, well, fuck the antis.
Yeah.
And fuck the hunting community if they're... I'm so sick of that, too, man.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time that I feel like the hunting communities kind of came together, and I get bashed by them more than anybody, I feel like. Because, and I'm not even trying to be like in the hunting space. I don't go to Western Hunt Fest.
Yep.
I don't normally show up to it. I should. I have a lot of friends.
You could go with me next year. You could walk around. You could hand out my little patches and stuff. You could be. Yeah. I saw Luke Cadilla out there this year, and he was like, "What? How come you get this and I get this?" And he's got these great big, mud wrestlers and fighters behind him. And
to me, like hunting is something that's personal, I guess, to me. Like I never want to publicize it. I talk about it on here because I'm passionate.
You saw the pictures of me with the lynx and the marten?
Yeah.
That's the first stuff I've ever posted.
Really?
And the only reason I did it is because I was doing it on somebody's livelihood trap line.
Yeah.
This is what they do. Listen to the podcast. If anybody wants to bitch about it, listen to the podcast. This is what they is what they live off of. This is what they do. Now, you might not agree with it, but this is what they do. This is how they live. He's married to a Tlingit, First Nations, Native person. This is how they live. This is how they supply themselves. And for somebody to turn around and criticize that, I thought that it was best for me to turn around and say, hey, here's the truth. Here's the facts. Here's the data. Here's the boots on the ground experience. You don't
Who
like
else
it?
has
Fine.
done that? Nobody.
Well, nobody
that I know of has recorded a podcast in the Yukon in a cabin.
I don't think so.
With the trapper.
With the trapper.
It's fucking awesome, Dan. Yeah. I mean, I'm so excited for you, man, and the future of what you got going on, because I think it's so much more than just fighting wildlife policy. I hope that you can have some fun with the podcast, and that human connection that I get in here is why I still do it. That's why I wanted to have you in tonight, is I wanted to hang out with you, and it's a I mean, we're an hour and 15 minutes in, and we're going to shut it down here real quick because I need to be respectful of your time.
I got all night.
And dude, thank you so much for. No, you don't. Don't you have to be somewhere? Like
I have a. What do I got? It's 5:00. I have a podcast, a Zoom webinar on Wolf Deal at 7. So I've got another hour here.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're.
Well, we're going to shut it down anyways because
you don't like me.
No. I want to real quick before you jump off. If you're listening to this right now, definitely go into the show notes. We'll have a direct link to Through the Gates. You can also find it on CRWM if you're listening to this and you can't figure out how to open the show notes. Go to CRWM Instagram. There's a link in there. Or go to SaveTheHuntColorado.com. There's a link in there. Make sure you subscribe, rate the podcast, write a review. All that shit helps get it out to other people. Share it with somebody. Share it with somebody that you know, even if they live in a different state. I mean, we have listeners around the globe. This is a really cool way to stay in tune with what's going on with wildlife. But not only that, the guests that you're having in, that human connection back to it, and some of the stories that those people have are crazy, like Martin, and just like some of those guests
Martin's
are unbelievable,
yeah.
you know? So yeah, I'm really excited for you and opening that whole thing up, and I'm a fan of it.
Thanks.
More importantly. Is there any like calls to action that you need now? Because there's so much coming up. I feel like another reason why I wanted to have you back on was I feel like everybody's like, woohoo, we won 127 and it'll never happen again.
Mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, we were fighting at the commission.
Right.
And we won.
And now we have all of the wolf stuff going on. There's firearm stuff. But what can help you the most besides subscribing to the podcast? Are you guys still taking donations?
Oh, God,
like what do you guys need?
We need, we're not a membership organization. As a C4, we found very little value in that because we're not going to supply you with a magazine. We're not going to have a bunch of banquets and fundraisers and rallies. We're not going to do fence pulls, and we're not going to turn around and do cow-calf recruitment counts and go help feed bighorn sheep. We do that stuff anyway, but we're not going to do it from an association side. Mm-hmm. Our mission is to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management, period. It's a board of 5 guys that are all self-employed, as I mentioned yesterday to Adam Nelson with Salida Gun Shop. They all come from a diverse background. They're all hunters. They're all sportsmen. We all have individual businesses that overlap for the cause and the lifestyle that we live. That being said, we're all intimately involved in legitimate conservation, boots on the ground, wildlife management organizations. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, Safari Club International, Mule Deer Foundation, Muley Fanatics, Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. We're all involved in all of those. Mm-hmm. But CRWM provided a niche to be able to complete the circle of what we were trying to do in the state of Colorado. That doesn't come cheap. You have to be able to fund it. Mm-hmm. Now, remarkably, from individual donors and contributors, we've been able to support that prior to the Ballot initiative and be successful on every form that we were doing through the small education campaigns where we did network television ads. We did the social media reaches and blitzes to whatever extent somebody would let us feed off of them. But keep in mind, until the campaign, our knuckle-dragging Neanderthal asses never had. We never had.
What did you just call
it? Yeah. It's like, you know, we never had social media.
Right.
We had a Facebook deal and we had an Instagram deal that had never been turned on. I remember sitting, I think it was at Wild Sheep or maybe it was Western Hunt last year, and Charles Whitman says, "Let me see your phone. You got an Instagram account?" I said, "Yeah, I got an Instagram account." He looks up, he says, "It's not turned on." I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to turn it on." He says, "Well, that doesn't mean you got one." And I said, "Well, I got one." You know, I mean, and so he got it all set up and took care of it. And we went from literally no followers, no messaging, to a point to where 13, 14 months later, after the election, where you ran and were participatory in a campaign that was roughly around $4 million in totality. To where you got 16,000 or 13,600 followers on Instagram and like 8,000 followers on Facebook. But some of the views that we were getting.
And that's all organic, right?
That's all
It's
organic.
Not bought and paid
no, we didn't pay
Yeah,
for anything.
yeah.
We didn't know how to do that. Not to mention the fact we weren't building that up for the campaign. Every dime that we had went into the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But the messaging side of what we did was all campaign driven. But when we started kicking out videos with Sean with Peak to Creek Productions.
He's done such a great job, too. Shout out to Sean, man.
He's badass.
He's fucking awesome.
I mean, he's probably got, he and I see eye to eye on different things from different generations, but he's allowed me to use my creativity in my brain and tell him what I want, and then he jots it down because I do it like in petroglyphs and stick figures, and then he makes it real. And when we started doing that, you see some of the views that we got, 12,000, 26,000, 35,000, 110,000, 214,000, 77,000. I'm like, who wants to listen to my dumb ass talk about politics on a ballot initiative 77,000 times or 214,000 times? That grew organically to the point to where that's one reason why we want to capitalize off of what we're doing for the podcast now is when you get guys like Meat Eater, Laramie Sasquatch Miller, Bear Hanlon, Aaron Snyder, Clay Newcomb, the Howl guys, Howl for Wildlife. When you have that sort of a following and that interconnectivity, and then you throw guys in like the local guys, the Bobby Marshalls, you get this connectivity that's driven at such a level because now everybody's talking about something that's going on in Colorado. Maybe I'm missing out. Maybe I need to pay attention. Well, Clay's talking about it. These guys mentioned that. Joe Rogan talked about it. Cameron Haynes is talking about it. These guys here. Pretty soon you look at it and go, now you become mainstream on fundraising. And while fundraising is still there, it's not like it was, nor do I expect it to be. Mm-hmm. Now, with the ballot initiative that was dropped today for 2026, it's a money-making opportunity for the antis because whether they win, lose, or draw, they're going to make money. But we need to make money again to turn around and start lining up a defense mechanism for this next ballot initiative.
Can you tell us what it is on mic, or is it?
Yeah. So the new one that just dropped today at 11:27 on March 19th, 2025 is called the Colorado Wildlife and Biodiversity Protection Act. It is in totality 6 pages.
Whoa, wait a minute. Read that one more time.
Colorado Wildlife and Biodiversity Protection Act.
What the fuck is biodiversity?
Well, it's interesting because I'll bet $1 to a dog turd that the gal who helped run the campaign for Cats Aren't Trophies, Samantha Bruger Miller, who then left Cats Aren't Trophies and went to work for the Center for Biological Diversity, has something to do with this in some capacity because they've tried to go through the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and the General Assembly in the last 90 days, and they've lost at every level. But because she's got this money backing, I'm assuming, I'm not sure, but all the language is the same. Now, to the average person would look at this and go, well, that's got to be good, until you read into the 6 pages, because we can make a lot of assumptions up on what's good and what's bad. But they want to create, in conjunction with a variety of other things in this, they want to create the Wildlife and Ecosystem Conservation Commission. This is up for the ballot that people will be able to vote on. This commission would collaborate with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and other conservation organizations. The commission shall be composed of 3 independent ecologists appointed by Colorado universities, 2 conservation biologists appointed by nonpartisan environmental organizations, 1 wildlife advocate appointed by a citizens panel, which shall be selected through a randomized lottery system from a pool of Colorado residents who apply. The panel shall be composed of 10 members and must include individuals with backgrounds in conservation, outdoor recreation, or environmental advocacy. It has to have 1 indigenous representative appointed by tribal governments, 1 environmental policy specialist appointed by a legal or policy institute specializing in conservation law, and 1 wildlife management expert appointed by a national or state-level wildlife agency. No members may have financial ties to extractive industries such as logging, mining, ranching, hunting, or other development. The WECC does not replace the CPW or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but supplements their work to ensure scientific integrity unless such agencies cease to function due to state or federal actions. If you look farther down into this damn thing, and it's like I say, it's 6 pages.
Yeah.
But it talks about funding and resource revenues. They want 20% of the money of this to go to a public outreach and education on conservation campaign. That's exactly what the Colorado Wildlife Council does to show the benefits of hunting and fishing through hunter-angler dollars. That is $1.50 off of each license. That's the one that I chaired during the campaign. I was the chair for 3 years. I was on it for 8. I just termed out the end of January. These type of languages that they're imposing on this are the red herring. The average person that doesn't know how process of government works or the public trust doctrine under the North American model of wildlife conservation that allows for government agencies to be the stewards and the managers of our wildlife resources through the American funding model that is created through the license sales, not to mention the Pittman, Robertson, and Dingell Johnson, which comes from the excise tax of firearms and ammunition and fishing equipment and so forth.
So what is it? Would they have jurisdiction or say, or would everything go to a vote on this fucking panel, or what?
Well, you tell me, because right now, if we want to get into the firearms conversation, if you look at the state permit that was created last year for the federal firearms license holders in the state of Colorado that now have to have a state permit, they passed that law. They don't have that division. They don't have any of the laws, rules, and regulations set. They don't have any of the fees imposed. They don't have any of the oversight, the enforcement set. They want to pass a law and then turn around and say, oh, and this is how we're going to make it. You can't tell me that this is an undermining method to create exactly what they want and what they lost on 127, what they lost at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, what they lost in 2019 with the citizens petition at the commission, 2020, 2021, what they lost at the General Assembly in 22 on Senate Bill 31, what they lost on Proposition 127 and 24, what they just recently lost in February, I think it was in March now, on House Bill 1258, which was the anti-hunting bill that lost 10-3 out of the House Ag Committee about 10, 12 days ago. This is an undermining effort, and it will come out. You'll be able to tell who's behind this when it comes out. Now, this is the process they have to go through. They still have to go through the title board. They still got to go through the Secretary of State, but now it's something else that the sportsman community has to belly up, cough money up to turn around and fight. If they get what they want, then they turn around and start gathering signatures. Then they start a campaign a year and a half in advance. They want to turn around and bring this out of the woodwork, and they want to misinform and miseducate the general public like this is going to do something other than undermine all efforts of science-based wildlife management and the North American model, period. Anybody that says anything different is a lying son of a bitch.
Can any of this shit be shut down at the federal level? Like, can it federally be mandated, like
not when it comes
wildlife
to
policy or something?
No, because the states manage the wildlife unless it's threatened and endangered, which then they still can to some degree if it's state managed under threatened and endangered species. The feds could essentially do something on federal land. I don't really want them going down that road.
No.
Just like what you're talking about, you see all the backcountry hunters and anglers groups and everybody bitching about the sale of public land and the private purchase and stuff. I'm not saying any of that's good. But what I would say is the divide and conquer mentality of the antis, no matter who they are, to create such diversionary tactics to organizations like ours, or Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, or the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, or Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, they get us so strung out, money-wise and message-wise, on so many different things that we don't have the resources or the bandwidth or just the boots-on-the-ground people nationwide as sportsmen. We got 14 million of us, but we can't turn around and fight things
Yeah,
that
they're
we think are
throwing
good.
smoke grenades everywhere. And I feel like from our side, we're just defending all the time. We're never throwing our own smoke grenades to shut them down. I don't know.
It's kind of hard to do that when you're, I joke about this, but it's
Yeah.
kind of hard to play offense when you're on the field all the time for defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there was a time that when Elway was quarterback for the Denver Broncos, And if you recall, when they were really good, when Shanahan was here, for years, Shanahan and the Broncos marched down the field on every first possession and scored. And if they could on the second one, they did too. And then they started running the ball. They started slowing the clock down. They had if they could score the first 2 times and the defense could turn around and hold them, then it was to eat the clock up. The Antis are doing just that.
Right.
They get a notch at their belt. They get a victory. They get maybe a bridge that they convince their fundraising opportunities to look at what we're doing. Even though we lost, we're going to revamp. We're going to retool. We're going to rebuild. They want to slow the clock down to where it confuses and it burns up time and money and resources. And I think intestinal fortitude. The more that they do it, the more that they think they're at the commission, they're at the legislature, they're in the press, they do these ballot initiatives, they turn around and keep spreading lies and deceit, they do fundraising, they do rallies, and it's the same old blue-haired, hobbit-looking bitches out there that turn around and do all the stuff over and over and over again. And it's frustrating because they're not doing it for the cause. They're not doing it for the right reason.
In my opinion, they don't do anything else but this. They're not out fishing. They're not out hunting. They're not out
and here's the deal, Bobby.
Enjoying nature. Like
they don't have a suggestion, a recommendation for an alternative.
That's
don't
the problem.
Do that. Okay, what should we do? It can't be that. Well, how should we do it? You have to do something different. Well, how should we do this? They don't have an answer. It's just don't. Their number is 0. The funding is 0. There's no replacement to it. But they think that if we don't do it, it's not needed, it's not necessary, and we'll all live in the Chronicles of Narnia going down the yellow brick road, and we'll be able to turn around and do whatever the hell we want to do.
Nothing but cartoons.
Yeah,
it's the only thing you can watch.
Yeah, exactly.
No American primeval, right?
No, I mean, and that's the frustrating part is no substitute or replacement.
Yeah.
If you listen to them testify, whether it's at the commission or at the legislature, and if they're listening to me and they could change their testimony, I don't think they get enough brains or balls to be able to do it. They don't have enough smarts because they don't want to talk about facts. You listen to them testify. They talk about everything that shouldn't be allowed to happen, but nothing to turn around and substitute or relate or
solve
fund.
it. Yeah.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this is my point right here. It's a crazy web that's wove, and you seem to be very much on the pulse of it, and I'm very thankful to have you. I think that
I need to come back once a week.
You're welcome once a week. You want to come back once a week? Just Dan Gates every Friday. That's the only podcast you're going to get from the mountainside.
You would lose viewership.
Just go subscribe to. I want to have you in at least like 3 or 4 times a year, continuously.
We can do that.
That's what I'm doing here. I'm building the community. I think what you're doing is so invaluable, and I think that the reason why I'm so invested in it is for my children. I want them to be able to experience Colorado the way that I did. There's a reason why I live here. I think that that's important. I think my call to action to my audience, no matter where you live, if you're in Italy and you're a fly fisherman, because we have those guys, shout out, that invite me over to Italy to go fly fishing all the time and catch these amazing trout that I've never even seen before, is to educate people yourself.
Yes.
Talk to your neighbors. I think that that's a lost art. Like, know who the fuck your neighbors are. Like, people are just living inside in their sheltered lives on their Instagram page, watching Dan Gates kicking ass around the fucking United States, doing whatever. But they're not actually getting their asses out of their lazy boys and going and meeting their neighbors. Or if you got an old lady that lives across the street, shovel her driveway. You know, like, just that sense of community, I think, is really lost unless you live in a rural area.
Yeah.
And
Bobby,
that's something that I noticed, and I just think that it's our responsibility.
Well, that's part of
share.
Part of the plan is, and part of the roadmap is constantly thinking about, if you got a bumper sticker on and somebody hits you up at the gas station, talk to them.
I know what I'm putting on.
Well, you don't want to talk about that for conservation, but
sorry, inside jokes.
Yeah,
nobody will know.
It might be public after a while, but if there was an instance, I didn't talk about it on your podcast, but there was an instance of an individual. in Canyon City before the election. And he hit me up at a function, and it was early October, 5 weeks before the election. And he told me I didn't realize how siloed I was in my community relations. I just kind of did my own thing, lived my own life, didn't screw with anybody, nobody screwed with me. Early October, 5 or 6 weeks before the election, his daughter drew an antelope tag, and they went out antelope hunting on a Sunday morning. Now, this is in Canyon City, so we're still mowing yards down there, probably like in January.
Mm-hmm.
In October, Sunday morning, they go out, and by 9:30, they were back. They went over south of town on a piece of private property. She got a doe antelope. They pulled into the driveway. The neighbor across the street was mowing the yard. They see this girl get out, redheaded girl. They'll know who I'm talking about. She has her orange vest on. She takes her vest off, puts it in the truck. They open the door back into the garage. They unload something. Didn't know what it was. The neighbor didn't. They close the garage door. Neighbor comes over at about 45 minutes later and he said, hey, I just wanted to check and see if everything is all right. And well, he saw them like it was a carcass that they'd already skinned, but it was in a cheesecloth bag. So that, they're hauling this like dead person out or whatever, as far as he knew. He said, I saw you. I was going to ask if you needed any help. And he said, I just saw you loading something, unloading it. And he said, oh, yeah. I said, well, my daughter drew her first antelope tag, and she got her license this year, and she got her hunter safety. And the guy looks at him and goes, you hunt? Now, these guys have lived across the street from each other for 14 years.
Wow.
My point to this is, if your neighbor of 14 years doesn't know that you hunt, how the hell do you tell him that you're the good guy, that conservation is the winner, that science-based wildlife management should be supported? Because that guy was going to the ballot in 5 weeks. You don't know how he was going to vote if he didn't know that you hunted.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell was he going to turn around and make an educated decision if he was on the fence? I think that if you magnify that times 10 million across this country, of how many people in your family, how many people in your business, how many people, your coworkers, your congregation, softball team, your neighbors, that don't know who you are, who are you most likely to take a word of advice from? Somebody that you know, somebody that you like, somebody that you work with, recreate with, and trust. Somebody that you respect, that you can actually go to them and say, hey, this is on the ballot, and I don't know squat about this, but I know that you're kind of in this circle. Mm-hmm. Can you give me some guidance or maybe where I go find some information? You don't have to get on a soapbox. But we do a piss-poor job until it's a grip and grin photo where we stick it out there for everybody to see, except for that neighbor, because he's not on your Instagram. He's not looking at your hunting stuff.
The reason, or I think the place where people are filling that void are in podcasts. Like I'm seeing it firsthand just by our growth, right? Because people feel, I know that I personally feel, when I'm listening to Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer talk about wolves in Colorado, I feel like I'm sitting in the room.
Yep.
I'm excited about it.
Yep.
Like, hey, they're talking about us, Like, I think that they're getting some of that through this. I think that that's why we've had success, and not even at a local level. Like, our audience isn't very local to where we're at. You know what I mean? It's like, it's pretty national, and then even worldwide, it goes on those fringes. I think that
it's a gift.
Yeah.
Just like I said, if the antis gave us a gift for the ability to be able to create this messaging, this soundboard, but if we have the gift before us, why wouldn't you want to at least, you don't have to browbeat, but why wouldn't you want to talk about it before you have to talk about it?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you let somebody know what you are, who you are, and why you do it?
I think also if you're a hunter, don't be arrogant. Tread lightly. Introduce these people the right way. Share, share your experience. Don't.
You know how you do that?
How do you do that?
Feed them.
Yes.
We do Sportsmen's Day at the Capitol,
mm-hmm.
April 25th this year. Last year, in the bad weather, we fed wild game to 450 people. The year before, 700 people. You feed legislators, you feed interns. They don't want to eat it, they don't have to eat it. We had the legislative sportsman's reception at the Buckhorn Exchange on the 28th, 29th of January. You're feeding legislators wild game.
Mm-hmm.
You feed them. Everybody has to eat. Now, they might not like it, but if they do, you just created a victor. You just created a winner. You just created an ambassador, a patriot, because I don't really want to do it myself. But, man, what they gave me was pretty damn good.
Well, also, I want to, in a different light, too, really genuinely explain why you do it. Be genuine. Be transparent. Talk about the emotion that you have. Talk about what it provides for you and your family. Every hunter that I know or I hang around has some sort of unique connection with nature, their food, what they put on their dinner table, what goes in their kid's mouth, what they will and will not buy from the store. You know, and I love when you coined the analogy of like, we are all hunter-gatherers. When you go to the fruit section and you start picking through the apples, we're doing the same thing as hunters. We're just doing it with deer or elk or fish.
When you can create an image to somebody like what you just explained.
Yeah.
And
no,
I've had
you
people,
explained that.
Well,
that's not. I'm coining your term.
But I mean, you see a gal in a halter top and spandex just coming from the gym, and she's looking through the plums and the peaches and the pears. She's not doing anything any different than a guy go out there picking mushrooms or the guy go out there trying to select a deer.
Well, that's just it. Like it could be in foraging. It could be, you know, it's so relatable. It's just on a different level. And I think like sharing that intimate side of it, and don't be afraid to share that intimate side, shows compassion to what we do, and it portrays us. I mean, there's this whole movement, and I think one reason why podcasts have been successful too on all levels is if people are authentic. That's why Rogan is what he is he's authentic in everything that he does. He's okay with disagreeing with somebody and getting lambasted for it, you know, and I've taken that approach here.
He's got the money to be able to turn around and disagree with the world. You know, I mean, but there's a crossover because you can be the educator, you can be the informer, you can be the facilitator without trying to implement. You can actually create that conduit, that mechanism for creativity and conversation, and you don't have to browbeat the crap out of them. One of the most interesting things that I've seen through my involvement of public education is tell the story about the benefit of what you do. Does it feed you? Does it provide mind release? Does it provide connectivity to your family? Does it turn around and provide you the experience that you don't get by being corralled into the concrete jungle? Does it provide you the ability to remember who you spent the majority of your young life with, or good family members? Does it connect you in a manner that other people can't comprehend by just walking and hiking and camping out? Because the pursuit of game provides something far different than spending time outdoors in the wilderness.
Yes, and explain that intimacy. I think hunters experience it way more intimate than anybody else other than a wildlife photographer. And I've really thought about this. Because they're in the elements and they're trying to fit into the elements the best that they can, whether it's wearing Sitka camouflage, hiding behind foliage, being quiet, noticing the wind, so even your scent is not noticeable. You know what I mean? And paying attention to your surroundings in the highest regard so you can be successful on a hunt. I don't think anybody experiences nature like
and when there's near misses, where you don't get a chance or you decide not to for whatever reason.
Studying animal behavior.
Yes. And figuring out what got you burned.
Yeah.
What you weren't successful on. I tell people
it's like playing Magnus Carlsen in a chess match.
Yeah.
It really is. If you look at the success rates.
Well, it's 9% on elk in the state of Colorado. Luke and I joked about this in our campaign.
Explain that to people. When you say you're going hunting
and only being successful 9% of the time, we'll be freaking starving to death.
Yeah.
You know, and if you had to apply for a permit to go to the grocery store with the chance of maybe getting something to take it home,
you had to draw for a Whole Foods unit.
Yeah. Okay.
So you could get better organic.
I got my toilet paper permit, but there's no toilet paper at the grocery store.
Holy shit, COVID, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We're trying to figure out how to wipe our own asses. It's
some
fucking
of us did
comical to me.
Because there was, you were just taking your gun or your bow for a walk.
Yeah,
that's all it was.
Yeah, tag soup, man.
Shane Mahoney said something multiple times, and I try to quote him because I think he's one of the most brilliant minds when it comes to wildlife conservation. Shane is with Conservation Visions, and he started the Wild Harvest Initiative. And he says, and it says in some of our videos that we did because we had him at the Capitol, he did some presentations for us. Wildlife does not happen by accident. Yes. Period. When you get people to understand the value of what you provide in totality of you purchasing a license so somebody else can go out there and enjoy it or just know the fact that it's being appropriately managed and taken care of. And then quantifying the fact that on mountain lions that you have a 20% success rate. On elk, you have a 9% success rate. What they're bitching about is the 91% of elk hunters that are out there that are trying to do it. Stop and think of that. They're bitching about them just as much as the ones that are actually harvesting something. They're bitching about the 81% of mountain lion hunters out there that are unsuccessful, that are contributed to the cause, so 19% can actually maybe take something home. They're bitching about the entire freaking system. They're not bitching about the harvest. They're bitching about the fact that you want to go do it.
Well, and I think one thing that I learned personally, I learned so much during this last year on mountain lions just in general. I had no idea that the species was at such a decline. Was it in the 50s? It was down to like 200.
1965 is when hunters and the Colorado Game and Fish Department took it out of a nuisance category, a predator, and put it into the big game status. And then in 1965, they guesstimated that there was roughly 200 on the landscape. In 2024, the guesstimate was between 4,400 and 5,000 adults and subadults, not kittens. So if you want to turn around and include that, you're probably in somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000, depending on what numbers you want to get.
A female has anywhere from
1 to 3.
1 to 3, right?
Maybe 4 on a rare occasion, but 1 to 3. But in any event, 60 years ago, we had 200.
That's so mind-blowing.
And you heard the lies and the deceit and the fallacies and the falsehoods of guys like Pat Craig with the Animal Wildlife Sanctuary up here in northeastern Colorado. Well, if we're going to continue hunting them at this rate, we're going to extirpate them. Well, we've been hunting them this rate, and I said this through the campaign. We've been hunting them this rate for the last 55 or 60 years, and we have 20 to 30 times more than what we had when we started hunting them.
Yeah.
I didn't say started killing them. We were killing them before they were a big game species when we started hunting them through a licensed, regulated harvest. We've got 20 to 30 times more now than what we had then.
Yeah, it's so mind-blowing.
Those are the stories.
I mean, it's not mind-blowing.
Tell.
I think that's freaking amazing. And that was something that I never put in. It wasn't in the back of my mind because I didn't grow up. I wasn't born. No. I was born in 1980, man.
You're a newbie. It's like, you're green and wet behind the ears.
Yeah, man. Still trying to figure shit out.
Well, and something that we have before us is the ability to adapt management procedures and objectives from science-based wildlife managers that are doing 961 species of wildlife in Colorado with 78 game species. And the reason I browbeat those numbers is because it's exposure and saturation. Mm-hmm. When I testified on House Bill 1258 several weeks ago, and I got up and I had my 2 minutes, there was roughly 8 or 9 minutes of questions from those legislators. I had multiple legislators approach me off of their bench when I returned to my seat, gave me their business card, and said, "Thank you very much for being factual and to the point. You changed our vote." They didn't want to listen to the bullshitters. They didn't want to listen to the extremists.
Nobody wants to listen to a bullshitter.
No,
yeah.
But if nobody's there to rebut that, refute it, who are you going to listen to? If you turn around and have an accident down here at the intersection, there's 10 cars sitting there. You ask every 10 drivers there, they're going to give you 12 different answers of what happened. I want to know from the factual-driven, science-based managers that are doing mountain lion studies in Colorado, not this crap that they're turning around trying to do on this new ballot initiative. We're going to do a lottery draw, and we're going to pick somebody here, and then the other 3 people need to come from a university. We have to have an indigenous person. Look, you want to recreate the wheel for something that we have that's the best in the world, the North American model of wildlife conservation.
It's highly regulated.
It's highly regulated, but every other continent is turning around and trying to emulate what we've got.
Right.
South Africa. I just hunted there. It's a fabulous place to hunt. You know why? Because they've essentially privatized wildlife because they were raping and pillaging the landscape because they have no management structure or no model to be able to turn around and go off of.
Yeah.
The North American model includes Canada and the United States. We have the ability to be able to turn around and manage appropriately without some subjective insurrectionist when it comes to you shouldn't, you don't, you can't, you won't, I don't like it. Mm-hmm. We have 350 experts at Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We've got more expert PhD scientists, biologists in Colorado Parks and Wildlife than most organizations have total employees.
And not only that, they have the ability when they're having a real issue with something, they don't know how to manage it, to bring in a specialist like Martin or something like that.
Yes.
To handle a certain situation or a species.
Listen to some of the
it's fucking mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like Captain Sully gets a bird strike.
Yeah.
Martin's out there fixing the fucking problem,
Exactly.
dude.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
You
Crazy.
know, and the flip side of that is you listen to James O'Farrell on the Canadian Trapline podcast, listen to him talk and spend 10 days with him. And he probably got tired of me asking him questions because, instead of
it's
just
like, why is this guy doing his research paper on me?
Yeah.
Little does he know what you.
We'd be riding behind him and I'd be sitting behind him on the snow.
Does he have social media and stuff? Does he know like what you've been up to and what?
He now does. He kind of was with it a little bit, but we'd be going along 5 foot of snow, turn around and go into the snowmobile, checking traps, and I'd tap his shoulder. And I'm like, what is that? What is this? How come you do this? Why is that? And he's probably thinking as he's driving, oh, God, I wish this guy just fall in the river. Because he just doesn't shut up. You want to do a podcast in my freaking, I got to shut the generator off?
Yeah.
So I'm going to have him listen to this, and he's probably going to laugh about this stuff.
I think he should start making and selling his shoes or his boots.
Yes. Yeah.
That nobody else has those. You can't go down to fucking Ross and buy those.
No.
Those are badass.
No, Cavender's and Boot Barn doesn't have those things. But Bobby, there's an intimate story that can be told. And while people, and I say this often, people say, what can I do? What needs to be done? How can somebody contribute? We need some money. Mm-hmm. We need ongoing donations from whomever. I'll go back to the same thing that Mike Costello said during the initial stages of our campaign. If you hunt in Colorado, you have an interest in this. If you apply for preference points in Colorado, you have an interest in this. Now, I don't expect
even in North America.
Well, yeah, I don't expect everybody to turn around and send us $1,000. Mm-hmm. But for a guy in Pennsylvania that's applying for 7 Western states, if he just turned around and take an extra $20 for each one of those states, now that's $140. And if 1,000 guys did that or 1,000,000 guys did that from around the country, you would help fund messaging components of science-based wildlife management to prop up advertising campaigns for the antis.
Yes.
It's very minimal. But what happens is people put it on the back burner and they're going, well, now everybody needs it. No, before we just wanted it, but we needed it.
Let me ask you one question. Well, let me say this statement too. And I really love that Cameron Haynes put this out, and this put it on my radar, is pay attention to the companies that you're buying from too, your gear-wise, right? Pay attention to who actually stepped up to the plate and donated to you guys or publicly shared information that you were putting out or reshared or did their own campaign to lobby against what was happening. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to that because you're voting with your dollars every time that you buy something. Mm-hmm. That's super important. My question is, if somebody doesn't have the means, right? I mean,
Good question.
A lot of the people that are true anglers, true outdoorsmen, guys that live up in Canada that are trapping for a living, they don't have a whole lot of extra money to get by. A lot of those guys are working blue-collar jobs. They're taking.
We have a solution.
Okay, yeah. So this is what I'm getting at. If you don't have the means or you don't feel like you have the means, are there other ways that you can help?
I've said this for the last 18 months. Give the cause 8 hours a year. 8 hours a year. I'm not talking about a banquet. I'm not talking about a fundraiser. When something comes up in your own town or through your own game department, your commission, through your legislature, sit down, get off your lazy ass and find out what district you live in and find out who your senator and representative is on the state level. Write them a letter, make a phone call, go to a meeting, deal with the decision makers. Every state has roughly 100 legislators.
You guys make it easy too. Like last night with that post. I mean, yeah, that was super simple.
Look, if you don't know, you're part of the problem.
Yes.
If you don't reach out, you're part of the problem. How many times has anybody...
If you give hunting a bad name, you're part of the problem. Yeah.
How many times have anybody been in a hotel room and there's like the soccer tournament in the room upstairs? Do you sit and take it? Do you go up there and want to knock on the door and kick the crap out of somebody, or do you call the management? You have this going on when it comes to wildlife management and wildlife resources. There's the soccer team or the basketball team, or maybe it's a bunch of kids or whatever. They're upstairs. banging on the door? Are you going to sit there and continually let it happen over and over? You want to quit listening to Dan Gates and Charles Whitwam and Mike Costello and Ryan Bronson and Jan Demosky, and you want to quit listening to us? Get off your ass and turn around and do something to help.
Yeah.
Give 8 hours a year. I don't care if you're at the Rough Grouse Association in Virginia or a Turkey Association in Pennsylvania or Mississippi or an Alligator Association in Louisiana or Florida or an Elk Association. Get off your ass and go to a meeting. Get off your ass and write a letter. It doesn't
Are you saying at the state level going to like a commission meeting
or the legislature?
Shit, you can do that online in your lazy boy now.
Yeah, you could do all that stuff, but here's the deal. If you take the time to vote, which a lot of our constituents don't, if you take the time to vote, what are you judging your opinion off of? A commercial? A bad ad that somebody else did against them? Because if they're the people that you're voting on and you don't know them because you don't know what district you live in, how the hell do you make the right decision to say, I'm going to call him and I want him to vote this way, or I need him to understand that this is going to affect my business, my livelihood, my religion, my travels on my roads and bridges, or maybe my hunting access? If you don't know any of that, you're letting the antis of whatever you stand for take that by the bull by the horns.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be hunting or fishing.
No.
Yeah.
I had a guy the other day, and it's comical because he shows up to the Capitol to testify, and somebody asked him, well, who's your representative? I don't know. What district do you live in? I'm not sure. You're here to testify. You're here to take the time to sit here for one of these gun deals for 8 hours or 10 hours so they can hear you. And you don't know if one of the people on the committee or the ones that you elected or the ones that got elected for you that are making the decisions on your behalf, you are the problem. You're not part of the problem. Yeah, somebody's going to know that you came and bitched and you did a really nice, polite statement, but you could have shook the hands of the guy.
It doesn't hold any water if you don't know.
No.
Yeah.
It's just like, going back to the hotel deal. The soccer players are banging on the door upstairs, in the room upstairs. You turn around and anonymously call the front desk.
Well, I think that this is something that is kind of a lost art and people don't even realize, even from my generation, that you can do this. I think that it's just been so ingrained.
We all have the same amount of time.
It was ingrained to me in school that you cannot change the system. There's no point in voting. You know what I mean?
Punch up Representative Rebecca Kelty out of Colorado Springs. Punch up Rebecca Kelty.
I had teachers in high school tell me that.
Yeah, wins. We'll look at that right there. YouTube. Nope, go back. You're too quick. Right there. Wins the House race by 3 votes. You tell me that you can't make a difference.
3 votes?
3 votes.
Now been decided, and Republicans are dropping their claims of election rigging because they won. The House race in Colorado Springs was initially decided by 6 votes, dropped to just 3 in a recount. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger shows us how any vote changes during a recount.
See?
There you go.
Any vote.
Intent is just not clear. Is this circle outside of the bubble meant to be a vote? Or is this filled-in bubble with the crossed-out line meant to be no vote? These ballots were just reviewed in the recount of State House District 16 in Colorado Springs.
If the voting system struggles to tell voter intent, then it sets those ballots aside for a bipartisan team to go and review. To see if they can determine which
3 votes. Somebody tells me my vote don't matter, you can kiss my ass.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
He went over El Paso County
Look at that.
recount results with us.
20,641 to 20,638.
Crazy.
Democratic State Representative Stephanie Vigil by 6 votes. At one point, the recount showed the race as a tie. These crossed-out votes that were not counted for Vigil originally were briefly counted during the recount until human reviewers got involved. A canvass board made up of a Democrat, a Republican, and the county clerk, who was also a Republican, made the same determination that was made prior to the recount, that these 3 votes should not count.
They found these 3 ballots that the system had accepted, but when they
all right, shut it down.
Yeah, 3 votes.
This proves the point. Get off your ass, go vote. Get off your ass, go do something, man.
Well,
I think that's a message
It's
to
nice to be able
everybody.
to talk about it now because we don't have an election, a general election, until November of 25, and then we obviously have things coming down the pike in November 26. Register. Get your stuff together. Contact your, and I don't care whether you're living
homework.
I don't care whether you're in Maine.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're in California listening to this. Do some homework and find out the people that are making decisions on your behalf. Because when you say, my vote doesn't matter, well, that means that they don't give a shit about what you think.
Exactly.
So when you go to talk to them because something is really definitive and how it's going to affect your livelihood, I'm a business owner in your district. Oh, really? I've never heard from you before. I don't know who you are. You have an auto mechanic shop with 12 bays and 42 employees? Huh. I wish I'd have known that before I made this decision.
You serve 42% of the county.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those sort of things fucking matter. Yeah.
So that goes back into what could you do? 8 hours. 8 hours per year. If every sportsman and woman in the United States who was of legal voting age took the time, 8 hours a year, to engage with the decision makers, write a letter, make a phone call, sit on a Zoom meeting, wait to testify, show up to a commission meeting, show up to a hearing, turn around and go to a legislative function and introduce yourself. Give me 8 hours a year and we will take all of this crap back. Because the antis won't do it, for one, because they're too damn lazy. For two, they don't want to drive their car too damn far because they're all driving Priuses. For three, they can't stand in line long enough because they got a bunch of parrots and freaking 47 cats in a trailer park they're trying to feed.
Trichinosis is real, man.
we have that. They're giving us a gift, and we have failed to open it because we're too worried about the success rate, what the size of it is, the preference points, the grip and grin photos. Give me 8 hours a year.
How much time do we spend on that? And
how
how
many
complicated is that system? And we all seem to understand that to draw on this crazy lottery system.
Yes.
That has 72 pages of fucking rules and regulations.
I had a guy 2.5 weeks ago before this 1258. He was going to they created a party, like a get-together whiskey drinking party to sit down with 7 guys to talk about their preference points and where they were going to go. But the dirty son of a bitch didn't have enough time to show up to the Capitol to testify on House Bill 1258. They spent 7 hours in a group. Come on.
Yeah.
Is this stuff worth fighting for, or is it worth watching be taken away?
Yeah. Don't be selfish. I think that's part of it too, man. Like if you want your kids, it's the whiskey.
It's a good thing
you better have another pour. We were supposed to end this thing like a half an hour ago.
Yeah, well, we're good.
Okay. All right.
No.
I think don't be selfish, man, because even though hunting becomes kind of the selfish thing, the selfish gratification that you get out of it, I think now more than ever we need to protect it because it's been under fire more now than ever. So don't be fucking selfish. If you want your kids to be able to do this, if you want to be able to do this, if you're 45, I'm 40, I just turned 45, and you want to continue to be able to do this in your lifetime, take fucking action.
1992, and I'll start to wrap this up.
Yeah.
In 1992, I watched Initiative 10 to ban the harvest of spring bears in the state of Colorado with bait and hounds be taken away. That was 1992. In 1996, I watched Colorado lose the ability to trap avocationally on public or private land with foothold traps, body gripping devices, and cable restraint devices. That was a constitutional amendment. It went before the general public to vote on. The reason I fight like what I fight now is because I'm affected by all of this, and I think it's bullshit of what they're trying to do, but I watch stuff be taken away. The problem with guys like you, the problem with guys like this young man over here, is that when we lost these other things, you weren't either born or you were like in second or third grade, and it's always been the case. If you've never had a firearm because somebody took it away, you don't think about firearms. If you've never had the ability to make a decision for yourself because somebody took it away before you actually had it, you never have the ability to make the decision for yourself. And that's what happened on some of this other stuff. And it just didn't happen in Colorado. Look what they did in California. Mm-hmm. People that are 30 or 40 years old for something that happened 50 years ago, they're like, it's always been this way. Game wardens that I deal with now that are 30 to 40 years old, They were in second grade or weren't even born yet. We just never could do it. So it becomes part of the shtick. You saw that movie Braveheart?
Yeah, great movie.
Where the king said, if you can't get them out, breed them out.
Right.
The cycle of attrition will turn around and eat us alive if we don't turn around and stand up and try to save it.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
We need to have more conversations.
We do. I think that's what's great about your podcast. So definitely go and subscribe to that. We got to get you the hell out of here, right?
Yeah, I got to go downtown. I got a wolf meeting at 7. So.
All right, Dan, thank you so much for your time, dude. I feel like we took too much of it.
No.
This time.
I mean, it's easy because I'm being asked questions opposed to me now trying to ask questions from all these other guests that I'm getting on. So.
Well, you're welcome on here anytime you want. You know that. So, you're in the studio more than I am some weeks.
I want to say something though publicly because you got a bigger following than we have, and you've got a lot of different viewers and listeners.
Man, take your time. I'm in no hurry. So, I'm in a hurry to get you out of here so you can be on
provided
time.
Something for us that would not have been of benefit to the entire community unless you reached out and Charles and those guys helped set this up initially. Unless you reached out to give us the platform and provide complete buy-in to what we were trying to do. You saw the benefit of what CRWM was bringing to the table and eventually what Colorado Wildlife Deserve Better, the campaign. And I got to thank you tremendously to the point to where, you talk about the value that I bring, but it's people like you that help provide that conduit and that mechanism. And I could go through the list of the 86 podcasts that I was on, and some of them were duplicates. But whether it's Go Hunt or Meat Eater or, just even those guys getting on to Rogan and talking and my name coming up. And when I was driving down the highway and people were like, you mentioned on Joe Rogan. You're mentioned on Joe Rogan. None of that would have started if it hadn't been for the Howl for Wildlife guys leading the charge at the first part and then giving me the reins to be able to do what we needed to do. But the generosity of individuals like Bobby Marshall and the Mountainside Podcast to be able to turn around and help and foster and continue the relationship, because that's part of the playbook. Mm-hmm. That's part of the roadmap. That's part of you being a badass bastard yourself.
Man, it takes a tribe. I know that's a cliche saying, but it really does. And I got to thank my listeners too, because they turned around and spent the time and invested and listened and got educated by you or whoever else I had on, whether it was Luke or Charles or Robbie from Blood Origin. I mean, I think that's one thing that we need to keep here, because there's always these little conflicts that happen within the communities and these different organizations, and somebody's getting mad because somebody's doing something over here. Like, let's fucking keep banded together. Yeah. That's my philosophy.
Do you think all the soldiers that went on Normandy or Iwo Jima all got along together?
Hell no.
But not until they hit the island and or the beach, and they figured out we better support these guys because the other guys on the other side are a lot worse.
Yeah. My last podcast I did was with a high-level ranger for a long time, at the height of in the last 30 years of conflict, has been seriously active. Mm-hmm. And even at that, with a ranger mentality of fuck everybody but a ranger type, or we're the best, right? Like, all those special operation guys think that their units are the best, whether you're a Navy SEAL or whatever. Yeah. At the end of the day, when some pure evil is coming down the pipeline, they're operating together under one unit to achieve one goal. I think we need to take that mentality. I think we need to take that special operations
same as what we started,
and be strategic. Yep. I think you have to be strategic, educated, and be practiced.
Same as what we started with Santino Castellanos with the first podcast I ever did, where I said, I'm a sportsman. I'm a sportsman that bow hunts, and I'm a sportsman that traps, and I'm a sportsman that elk hunts, and I'm a sportsman. And nothing is more humbling to see all the stuff that we've done over the past 18 months when people walk up to me with a shirt with my stupid face on it that says I'm a sportsman, or that somebody walks up to you and says, Dan Gates, I'm a sportsman.
Yeah, man.
That's why.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. I love having you in here. We always go longer than you have, so I'm sorry to be a time sucker.
It didn't snow today.
But welcome to the time machine here at the Mountainside. So
thanks, Bobby.
I appreciate you. Tyler, let's wrap it up. Right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Go subscribe to Dan's podcast. Support CRWM. get off your ass and go to a commission meeting in your state, country, whatever. Be a voice. Thanks, everybody. Love you all.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. If you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.